I've been sent loads of new acrylic paints to try out. The things I do for a good thumbnail. There's literally so many colours here. I've never had this many colours before. Cannot wait to use them. I decided to do a little swatch of colour on each of the lids so I could see exactly how transparent or opaque each paint was. After doing this a few times, I realised that to get a proper feel for the paint I needed to do it over white, so I decided to split the lid in half and paint some white on there. These paints are actually fabric paints for painting on leather and things like that, and they came with all sorts of extra goodies. But we're going to save those for another video. Now I need to choose some colours for this painting. I've tried to choose colours that I wouldn't normally use in a painting. I'm going to try to use them in a different way and create something that maybe you wouldn't expect from the colours that I've chosen. The paint was a lot more liquidy than I was expecting, so it's a good job that I put the palette on a flat surface. I just used a little bit of water to thin down the paint like I would do with any types of acrylic. I'm working on a mini 6x6 inch panel, and I'm just starting by blocking out the basic shapes using a large flat brush from my Studio Wildlife brush set. The response to the brush set has been absolutely fantastic, so thank you to everyone that's bought one, and from the 300 that we had, there are less than 20 left, so thank you so much. After blocking in the largest shapes with the big flat brush, I'm just starting to refine some of the smaller shapes now using a darker blue and the filbert brush from the set. I'm not being overly precise with my brushwork. This is going to be quite a contemporary, quite messy, quite abstract painting. I'm just focusing primarily on colour, but I am still trying to get those large blocks of colour in the right place and at the right value. So how light and how dark each colour is needs to be relatively accurate. I had to step away from the painting for about 40 minutes, and what happened was the paint got a little bit tacky and a bit clumpy, but that is what happens when you're using small quantities of acrylic paint, and an easy fix for that would be to use a stay wet palette. I'm just using a glass palette for this, so my fix was just to put out some more paint. I really like how the orange and the blue contrast each other so much. Placing those colours next to each other really makes each one pop. It brings out the coldness of the blue and the warmth of the orange. I definitely want to do some experimenting to see how I can use contrasting colours more in my larger scale work. Ugh, it's a lot harder than I thought working in this stylized way with these random colours. Like, I'm used to sort of sitting there and copying my reference photo and using the colours in the reference photo, so deviating in this way is a challenge, but I do think I'm learning quite a bit from it, and it is something that I'm going to do in the future as well, because I think moving away from those colours in the reference photo, sticking exactly to them, is limiting me a little bit. So I think by doing experiments like this where I'm just using completely random colours is just going to open up what I can do. Anyway, hopefully with a few more layers of paint I'll be able to get this looking pretty cool. Let's get to it. This last stage of the painting is where I'm going to go a little bit darker and lighter with all of my colours. I'm using combinations of watered down transparent paint and also more solid looking opaque paint to create the abstract marks and hopefully give the impression of fur. The eye is one of two parts of this painting that I actually want to paint in some relative detail, so I'm taking extra care with the eye, starting with the pupil colour and then building up the shape and structure of the eye around it. I really love this bright, intense pop of orange. I just think it adds a glow to the eye. Then that real finishing touch, which adds the life and character to the bear, is that highlight. Now he's got a bit of something about him, I can start to build up the rest of the face. I'm using my smaller filbert brush now to just build up some slightly more controlled, opaque lines for the fur, but I'm still keeping it relatively abstract. Again, this painting is more about the shapes and the colours than the details. So I'm not going in with tiny strands of fur, just big blocks of colours. I'm focusing on mark making rather than realism to create the impression of details. I'm cheating a little bit here and I'm using some regular acrylic white paint. Hopefully you'll forgive me. I'm using the white paint to soften some of the edges and sharpen some of the edges, just playing with the interaction between the bear and the background. The nose is the other part of this painting that I want to be in a little bit more detail. Again, I'm not going overboard, I'm not painting all the tiny little bumps and crevices and cracks of the nose, but I am trying to build up a little bit more form through the use of more colours and smaller brushes. The last little bits for this painting are the final touches using a palette knife. I just love the marks that a palette knife makes, the sort of like random dabs of colour that you can't achieve with a brush. I use it to add splashes of colour throughout the painting and also refine some of the edges as well. I am putting white paint on a white background, but it just unifies that painting, bring the subject and background as one picture. Well, here it is, the finished mini painting. I love how this piece has turned out, but it was just a practice piece for a special project that I'm going to be working on soon. Now all I've got to do is figure out how to paint this on a pair of shoes.